Okay, well, we have a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and jump in. Welcome, everyone. My name is Rayla Bellis, and I'm the Director of Thriving Communities at Smart Growth America. We're really excited to have you joining us for this info session about our Complete Streets Leadership Academies programs, which is a technical assistance and peer learning program that we've done a number of times at this point in various iterations to help states and localities work together to learn about complete streets, facilitate cross-jurisdictional coordination, and then actually implement temporary complete streets projects on the ground. So this session, we're going to talk about the program and the application process for this competitive opportunity. We'll hear from some of our partners first. I'll just make a couple of logistical announcements before we really jump in. So this session is being recorded. The recording should be available on our website within a couple business days of this webinar. We will also send an email out to all of the people who RSVP to this webinar with the link to the recording. So keep an eye out for that. We will have a question and answer portion at the end of this session. You're welcome to put questions in the chat as we go. We'll get to as many of those as we can. We'll try to answer some of them in the moment if we can. Once we get to that question and answer portion, though, you're also welcome to use the raise your hand function within Zoom to actually ask your question verbally. You can come off mute. You can even turn on your video if you want. And we'll go over how to do that briefly when we get to the question and answer portion. And I think that's all my logistical announcements. So I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, Beth Osborne, who's our Vice President for Transportation, who's going to kick us off.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're really excited to talk about this program and potentially work with some of you. A little bit about who we are. You've met Rayla, you've met me. I'd also like to introduce Anushka Thacker, who's also on the call and is our associate that helps run this program. We'll be the main people you see, but there will be other folks from the organization who pop into programming from time to time for those who actually participate in the academies. Going on to the next slide, Smart Growth America is a national nonprofit that envisions a country where no matter where you live or who you are, you can enjoy living in a place that is healthy, prosperous, and resilient. We are made up of many different programs, some of which you have probably heard of, most likely the National Complete Streets Coalition, which is part of Smart Growth America, Transportation for America, and we work a lot with the State Smart Transportation Institute out of the University of Wisconsin. We do many different things. We offer technical assistance to those communities that are seeking the same outcomes we're seeking. Our idea is if you see the same mission as we see, we want to roll up our sleeves and work with you and share success stories and challenges that have been faced by our partners across the country, but also learn about what successes and challenges you've had to share with others. We also look at policy change and we will, through that technical assistance, identify some policy and legal barriers, work with public officials to create legislation or administrative action to change it and advocate for that change. And then go back and work with you on the implementation. And we also participate in what we like to call thought leadership, but it's really about imagining a better world by doing research and reporting and talking about what changes could impact quality of life, public health, environment, economies, things like that. This session, we're going to talk about the Complete Streets Leadership Academies, a little bit of background on them, our partnership with CDC, Federal Highways Complete Streets Initiative, and details on the program structure and application process. There'll be plenty of times for you to ask questions, but like Rayla said, don't wait for the end. If you've got a question and you don't want it to be lost or forgotten, please include it in the chat, and we'll make sure that we're following the chat and are able to get to it at an appropriate time, might even be able to answer it on the fly. The reason we're working on this, the reason we're so focused on developing safe and complete streets is because we do not have a good record on safety. A lot of times we focus on the trend, which is terrible. And what you don't see here is in 2021, it looks like this number has jumped several hundred again. But our numbers weren't good before this trend. You know, we had been on a better trend. We were moving downwards in fatalities, but our fatalities were too high to start with, especially compared to our peer nations, and this continues to get worse. We want to reverse this trend. The other problem, of course, is the folks that bear the brunt of this are amongst our most vulnerable. They're the people who only have walking as a way to get to their basic necessities, whether it be grocery or banks or schools or daycare or their jobs. We find that people walking in lower income neighborhoods are the ones that are being struck and killed at much higher rates. They have less access to vehicles, and it's the roads in their communities that are so built for vehicles that it puts people not protected by a vehicle in great jeopardy. We also find that it is particularly dangerous for folks who are Black or American Indian. Native Americans and Black Americans are really bearing the brunt of this danger. We see a slightly elevated list for the Hispanic community and Latine community, definitely more dangerous than those who are white. We want to make sure that the benefits of our investments and our quality of life and safety is shared, and there aren't certain populations who are carrying the burden. A lot of the problem is we have developed a very sophisticated transportation program around building out a highway system. And as the eligibilities of that highway program at the national level expanded to include a lot of surface streets, we imported the very standards, those highway standards, to those surface streets along with the money. And those standards are inappropriate at the surface level. It's one of the reasons we built a separated highway system. Is back in the 50s, we said we want to move vehicles at a fast speed between communities that are far apart from each other. Well, we would never do that at the surface level because that would be dangerous. Well, unfortunately, we kind of forgot that lesson. And there are tons of barriers and mines buried in our program that we don't necessarily see as creating a safety problem, but they do. Where we prioritize speed, where we prioritize the movement of vehicles, we are putting the driver in a very untenable situation where they are moving quickly. Their vision is narrowed. They do not have as much peripheral vision at a high speed. They don't have as much time to react to a potential conflict that they may be less able to see. And if they crash, it is more likely to be fatal. So what we want to do where there's tons of conflict points is bring that speed down to a safe level. We want to make sure that not just are we reducing speeding crashes, but speed limits that are inherently too high for a conflict-rich zone full of driveways and cross streets and people who are just trying to go about their daily business. And we will be talking about what are some of those design features that make a roadway safer. And we're at a really opportune moment. I'm super excited to have both the CDC and Federal Highways on the phone with us today, or on the Zoom call with us today. We are seeing an unprecedented focus on creating the infrastructure and the built environment that more naturally leads to a safer and healthier environment, a place where people can move around and get to the destinations that they need to, no matter how much money they have. And you know, if you grew up in a family like mine of 5, maybe you could get by with 2 or 3 cars as opposed to 4 or 5 cars like my family had to. Look for ways to save them money. Maybe that money could be put into somebody's college fund so that they didn't have to pay it off until they're 50. Not a personal story or anything, but to give people a real shot at economic opportunity, but more importantly, fundamental safety and quality of life in their communities, no matter how much money they earn. I will just close up by saying The resources coming out of the Federal Highway Administration are really useful, really exciting. Our partnership with the CDC has also produced a rich array of tools and information that we want to share with you all. And looking forward to seeing a lot of folks raise their hand to join in this effort and test out some changes that can really make a near-term and strong impact on people's everyday lives. Now, I'm going to hand things over at this point to our partner at the CDC. Hatidza, you are on.
All right. Thank you, Beth, for that introduction. I will go ahead and share my screen. Oh, it's telling me I cannot share the screen. Let's try again. All right. Hopefully folks see this now. All right, Rayla, are we good to go?
You're good to go. Sorry about that.
All right. Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you all for having me today. My name is Hatidza Zaganjor, and I'm a behavioral scientist on the Physical Activity and Health Branch in the Division of Nutrition, Physical Activity, and Obesity at the CDC. I'm also the technical monitor for Smart Growth America, where I get to oversee the many great projects that they work on. So before I begin my presentation, I really just wanted to thank you all first for considering this incredible opportunity to identify and overcome barriers to implementing safer and more accessible streets for all users. I believe it's these types of collaborations where we bring together the skills and expertise of engineers, planners, decision makers, public health practitioners, community leaders, and other related professionals that we can bring meaningful change to our transportation system and use these types of examples as a model for other communities in our country. So today I'm going to start by talking a little bit about a CDC-led initiative called Active People, Healthy Nation, which you may have noticed on Beth's slides. And this is an initiative which aims to get 27 million more Americans physically active by 2027. The initiative supports equitable and inclusive access to opportunities for physical activity for all people. Active People, Healthy Nation strategies are intended to engage people at the local level to ensure that activities are community-driven. So it's probably no surprise to folks on this call that there are many benefits to being physically active. Physical activity is one of the best things that you can do for yourself today, tomorrow, and even 10 years from now. Immediately, physical activity can help improve things such as your sleep quality, reduce feelings of anxiety, and lower blood pressure. Over the long term, it can help reduce the risk of many diseases and conditions such as dementia, weight gain, and several types of cancers. And we now know that physical inactivity is actually associated with increases in risk for severe COVID-19 outcomes, including hospitalization and death. So it's clear that physical activity improves the health of individual and groups of people. But did you know that communities where it's easy, convenient, and accessible to be physically active also experience additional benefits beyond those related to personal health? The elements that make a community activity friendly, so thinking about sidewalks, wide open main streets where people can move about freely, and being able to walk or ride a bicycle safely and conveniently to the places you want to or need to go, can also bring economic benefits, such as increased retail activity, employment, and property values. It can also improve safety benefits to make it easier and convenient for people to walk and roll in wheelchairs or ride bicycles to get around. And it can improve productivity because physically active people tend to take fewer sick days. But to achieve the benefits of physical activity, it's important to meet the physical activity guidelines for Americans, which outline the amounts and types of physical activity recommended for different age groups. You can see some of those guidelines highlighted here. I won't go into detail, but there is a link noted at the bottom of the screen if you're interested in learning more. Unfortunately, people don't get the levels of physical activity that they need. Only 1 in 4 adults and 1 in 6 youth fully meet physical activity guidelines, and we have been seeing youth levels of activity decrease over time. And we know as people get older, they become more inactive. So you may wonder why that is. And that's because there are many real and perceived barriers to being physically active. And I'll quickly walk through some of those barriers and they're similar to some of those that Beth had mentioned as they relate to the physical environments people live in on the following slides. So we know walking and biking are dangerous and becoming a barrier are a barrier for physical activity, especially to those vulnerable road users or anyone outside of a vehicle. That risk is actually 5 to 8 times higher than those of vehicle occupants. We also know that people don't have access to safe streets. It's only 1 in 7 individuals have access to streets that make walking safe and easy. We have also learned that traffic prevents children from walking to school. Nearly half of parents interviewed indicated that because of traffic, it's too dangerous for their children to walk to school. We also know that people don't follow the speed limits. Only a third of people reported that they lived in neighborhoods where drivers followed the speed limit. And this is pretty shocking, knowing that the speed limits are already set pretty high in most places around this country. And we know that over 80% of adults reported favoring or strongly favoring safer street designs, even if it meant driving slower, which is really interesting, continuing when we tend to design in the opposite way. So Active People, Healthy Nations supports Active People, Healthy Nations supports a set of 7 evidence-based strategies that work to increase physical activity. This initiative is one way we can get more Americans physically active by working to address the barriers in our environments that can make it harder to be physically active. All of these strategies seen here are all based on evidence from the Community Preventative Services Task Force. So if you go to our website, you can find additional information and resources about these strategies. The base of this work is equity and inclusion because they're foundational and need to be the focus of everything that we do related to this work. And the main strategy that our division is currently focusing on is the one at the top, activity-friendly routes to everyday destinations, which focuses on creating routes like bike paths and sidewalks to places people typically go to. We've also been working on the access to places for physical activity, specifically as it relates to parks and recreation centers. So our vision is that regular physical activity is a norm and everyone, regardless of age, race, socioeconomic status, disability status, and geographic location, has safe and convenient, accessible opportunities to be active. Building a national movement that creates a culture of physical activity is one way we can give all people in this country the life-changing benefits of physical activity. So your presence here today has made it clear that you too support this vision. Anyone is eligible to join Active People, Healthy Nation, and you can actually do so right now. You can lift your phone and scan the QR code on the screen, which will take you to the join page. One of my colleagues can also help assist you with signing up if you're having any trouble today, and you will just need to confirm a link when you receive that in your inbox. So by joining Active People, Healthy Nation, which is essentially just entering in your email address, you're saying that you believe physical activity is important and you support the goal of getting more people physically active in this country. We have many resources to help you spread the word about Active People, Healthy Nation and engage with your communities. Resources include fact sheets and presentations to share information about this initiative and free or low-cost digital advertisements focused on physical activity. So again, I applaud you all for taking the time to join this session. I look forward to working with many of you, whether it may be through an academy or through the many other opportunities that Smart Growth America has, or any one of our other partners that we work with. I also encourage you again to join Active People, Healthy Nation, and if you have not already done so, and to think about strategies you may be able to support when it comes to improving the health of people in your community. You can feel free to email me directly. My email information is on the slide here. If you have any questions or concern, I will be able to stay on for a few minutes if there are any questions that come through the chat. Otherwise, I think Rayla could pass any questions along to me as appropriate. So Rayla, I will go ahead and turn it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we're, of course, thrilled to have CDC and Active People, Healthy Nation initiative as an ongoing partner for our Complete Streets Leadership Academies and all of the other work we do with you all. So thank you again. We are now going to turn things over to Barbara McCann, who's with FHWA's Office of Safety, also the founder of the National Complete Streets Coalition. She's going to tell us a little bit about FHWA's Complete Streets initiative. Go ahead, Barbara.
Okay, thanks, Rayla. Let me share my screen. Hopefully this works. Can you see it? I think so.
Yes.
So I just want to give you a quick overview of the Complete Streets Initiative that started at Federal Highway Administration a little bit over a year ago, just to give you a little bit of context to help with this Academy initiative. So you already heard a little bit about the trend in pedestrian fatalities. There's actually an overall trend in fatalities across the country, where the 2021 estimates now are almost 43,000 deaths, which is a 10.5% increase over 2020. It's the highest number since 2005. It's a really large jump in the last 2 years in the overall fatality rate. So we really need to double down on safety overall. And you may or may not be aware that the department as a whole, Secretary Buttigieg did announce a few months ago our National Roadway Safety Strategy, where we really have a comprehensive approach to reduce serious injuries and deaths on the roadways. And we've really made a commitment to get to zero. And this involves Federal Highway Administration, National Highway Safety Administration, Federal Transit Administration, the whole department. And of course, Federal Highway Administration has a very important role in this. And part of that role is complete streets. In the safe system approach, we're really involved with creating safer roads and safer speeds, as Beth just talked about the importance of that. Complete streets, we have, for the first time, we have a definition in federal statute. This is in the new bipartisan infrastructure law that defines what a complete street standard or policy is. It's a policy or standard that ensures the safe and adequate accommodation of all users of the transportation system. And there is a requirement in the law for states and metropolitan planning organizations to use planning dollars for this kind of planning. So when we talk about complete streets, our deputy administrator, Stephanie Pollock, likes to talk about a complete street as a street that is safe and feels safe for everyone using the street. And our initiative that we've started about a year ago is really focused at supporting transportation agencies as they plan, develop, and operate these streets. Because of course we do build a few roads in our federal lands program, but mostly we're helping out the states and localities who are doing the actual planning and design and construction and operation. And what's probably most important for this initiative is that a full transition to a complete streets design model requires leadership, identification, and elimination of the barriers, and development of new policies, rules, and procedures to prioritize safety. It's an approach it takes time, it takes effort, and it's not something that the minute that you pass a policy, everything changes. It takes quite a bit of work, and that's what we're looking to help with. The first product of the Complete Streets initiative at Federal Highways was this report, Moving to a Complete Streets Design Model. Came out about 2 months ago, and it reviewed all of our policies, rules, and procedures, and identified relevant documents that we need to change, 5 opportunity areas, and 10 underlying challenges. And I really recommend that people take a look at it. It's really directed at getting our own house in order, or doing our own work to make complete streets the default approach. But there certainly are lots of lessons in there, lessons we can learn from state and local organizations as well. However, we're already on the road. The report includes, we already have been doing a lot of technical assistance that really does support safety for all users. And this graphic gives just a sampling of some of the documents that we've put out and some of the areas that we're working in. So I think we already have a lot of great resources that I hope will be of use as the local communities are working toward complete streets, and we'll have more to come as well. And I wanted to make a special note of our new grant program, which is closely related to complete streets. Safe Streets and Roads for All program. We are working closely with the Office of the Secretary on this program. We did issue the notice of funding opportunity just a few weeks ago. The proposals are due in September. And we have about this first round where we have about $1 billion to award to not to states, but to local entities such as a city or county, regional entities such as MPOs or a transit administration, tribal governments. That's who's eligible. And the projects include developing a comprehensive safety action plan, conducting planning and design and development activities in support of a plan, which can include some quick build projects, and then carrying out the projects and strategies that are identified in a plan. So it's quite a bit of funding, and I really hope that you will take a look at the notice of funding opportunity. We're having a lot of support for potential applicants moving forward. And I also hope that you'll visit our Complete Streets webpage. Right now, we just have a single page, but in the next few weeks, we're going to have we have a deeper page coming with lots and lots of resources, both from federal highways and from partners to help as we move in that direction. And I think that's all I have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Barbara. We're so grateful for FHWA's leadership on Complete Streets.
Okay.
So with that, let's get into it. Let's talk about this program, the Complete Streets Leadership Academies. So I'm going to talk about what this program is, the program structure, and the application process, which is currently open and which is a competitive application process. So what are Complete Streets Leadership Academies? I already said this is a technical assistance and peer learning program that we have run several times already in various iterations. These are some examples of written case studies from our past programs. And you can see the link to the most recent one, which is in Washington State, and is probably most similar to this current iteration that we're launching in its structure. So this program brings together states, State Department of Transportation staff, specifically state health partners, and then jurisdictions in the state to come together to learn about Complete Streets, to learn about cross-jurisdictional collaboration, and then to actually implement temporary Complete Streets projects on the ground. So each program, we're thrilled in this case to actually be doing a competitive process to pick the states themselves, and to be offering up to 3 different Complete Streets Leadership Academy programs, meaning that up to 3 different states will have their own Complete Streets Leadership Academy program taking place within their state. Each program will include, again, representation from the State Department of Transportation, from state health partners, and then 3 local jurisdictions, which will each engage a cohort of about 8 to 10 partners on the ground. So that can be everything from local planning and public works staff. It can be MPO or other regional agency staff. It can be local health partners. It can be partners in economic development. We've had tribal partners be part of some of these cohorts. So each local jurisdiction will have its own cohort. They will then all as a group, so the state partners and the 3 local jurisdictions will participate together in a series of workshops over several months. That will be some combination of virtual workshops and in-person workshops, and that exact mix will be worked out with each state once they're selected. We've done both at this point. This used to be a fully in-person program where we would do workshops in each of the 3 localities. We then did a program that we ended up transitioning to fully virtual during the pandemic. So we feel like a hybrid model works really well at this point. In terms of the time commitment of those workshops, it will be approximately 30 hours, maybe a little bit less, and that will be worked out with each state as well as we schedule the sessions. And then throughout those workshops, participants will not only be learning from national experts and each other about different aspects of Complete Streets implementation, but they'll be taking time during those workshops to actually plan and eventually launch their own Complete Streets demonstration projects. And I will talk a little bit more about exactly what we mean by this in a minute, but these are quick build projects, rapid installation, short-term, and Smart Growth America will provide subgrants to each participating locality for materials to do their projects through our support from the CDC. We are in our application process going to be giving priority to any states that are willing to do at least some of the demonstration projects on state-owned roads. So state DOTs that are willing to work with the local jurisdictions who are participating to do the Complete Streets demonstration projects on state roads that go through those communities. This is a new aspect of the program. This isn't something we've included in previous versions of this program. We're going to be piloting it. We know this isn't something that many state DOTs typically do, these really short-term pop-up complete streets projects on state roads. We're looking for states that want to be pilot states with us in doing this, that we can hold up as national models, including working through how that would work in your own procedures and working through that with us. So what are the benefits of this technical assistance program, these Complete Streets Leadership Academy programs? Well, we hope that you will enjoy many benefits if you participate. You'll participate in workshops with national experts, not only Smart Growth America staff, but our partners at other organizations and leading firms and experts from around the country. We also usually bring back participants from previous versions of this Complete Streets Leadership Academy program that were really successful with the specific pieces of it, whether that's community engagement around their demonstration projects, making the projects permanent. Ultimately, we bring back guest speakers to share their experiences, so we bring in more peer learning that way. We think these programs are really great, again, for cross-jurisdictional collaboration and identifying and addressing policy barriers at both the state level and the local level to make complete streets as easy as possible to do and to implement in your communities. This is a great source of peer learning. Often the participants feel like they gain as much from talking to each other as they do from national experts. They get to compare notes about barriers that they're encountering. Sometimes they can help each other find solutions. It's really wonderful. Importantly, this program does actually result in temporary safety improvements on the ground through subgrants from us. So we, as I said, provide some funding for materials to do that. So that's really exciting. This is the only technical assistance program we have where that's a component of it, actual safety improvement projects. And we always write up case studies of our 3 demonstration projects. The link that Anushka shared in the chat a few moments ago was from our Washington State Complete Streets Leadership Academy demonstration projects. We like to really share these stories widely, elevate participants as national models, including the State Department of Transportation for being a leader on complete streets. We want state leaders on complete streets that we can hold up and show other states their successes. So we would tell your story in our national networks and our blog and circulate that widely. So in terms of timing, and I'll get into a little bit more depth with this. So this program, like I said, the time commitment for the workshops themselves is roughly 30 hours. The exact timing of each of these programs and the mix, again, of virtual versus in person will be coordinated with each state once they're selected. But in general, the workshops will kick off in October or November, probably late October, early November. They'll take place through mid-spring of 2023 in several workshop blocks, so sort of chunks of time. And then we would write up the written case studies between May and July of next year. Typically what we'll cover in these workshops, we always customize the curriculum a little bit from state to state. Beth and I like to joke that we just really are not good at doing off the shelf technical assistance. We always end up tweaking it based on the specific states. But we'll cover things like level setting around complete streets, implementation, the fact that it's a paradigm and a process. We'll talk about inclusive community engagement. We'll spend a good chunk of time talking about complete streets design and specifically some of the details of how to actually plan and design temporary complete streets demonstration projects, and we'll workshop that throughout the sessions. We'll talk about performance measurement, both for the projects themselves and for complete streets programs and work more generally. We will talk about communications and storytelling. And then we'll talk about how to maintain momentum after demonstration projects, whether that's by making the project permanent ultimately, whether that's by doing more pop-up projects elsewhere in the community, building on it to make policy change, what have you. So just to get a little bit more into the schedule now that I've talked a little bit about what the workshops will cover. So I mentioned that these workshops will be in blocks, basically. So this is roughly what that will look like. Again, this is somewhat flexible, but we are planning that each participating state and cohort of localities will have a workshop block in late fall where they talk about, among other things, selecting the site for their demonstration projects through community engagement. The time commitment per block will be about 8 to 10 hours, either like a 1.5 day in-person workshop or a series of virtual workshops in relatively quick succession. Then we'll do another block in winter 2023 between January to March. Again, about 8 to 10 hours of time commitment that will largely be focused on the design of the projects as well as things like performance measurement. We'll talk again about community engagement at this stage. And then we'll do a final block when many of the projects have actually already launched or are about to launch, where we'll talk about storytelling, communications, and maintaining momentum. So what do we mean by quick build demonstration projects? This is an important question. So what we're calling quick build demonstration projects are basically temporary projects to improve safety and access to destinations through the use of safety countermeasures paired with strategies like tactical urbanism and creative placemaking. So often what that will look like is things like temporary crosswalks, temporary bulb outs, temporary bike lanes, other traffic calming type strategies, often using materials like paint, cones, planters, rubber curbs, other temporary materials to create that change. We think this approach has so many benefits for complete streets, improving safety, and generally building buy-in around the need. Because of the rapid implementation of these projects, it allows a lot of flexibility. They are low cost, which again allows a lot of flexibility. They are collaborative, meaning local agency staff and state agency staff can engage partners like residents themselves to help with installation, like local businesses to donate supplies, other partners. They can be really great ways to bring people into these types of projects. They're a really great tool for testing and measuring the effectiveness of specific safety improvements that you're considering, and then also measuring people's responses as you're thinking about making a change that's more permanent rather than rolling something out, discovering belatedly that it didn't have the impact you wanted or that it doesn't have the support that you want. To that point, they can really be helpful in overcoming political barriers. A lot of times the resistance to a street improvement project that improves safety at the expense of vehicle speed or throughput will have a lot of resistance in theory. And then once it's implemented, people will see the value of it. So this helps you get there quicker at lower cost in a way where you can actually make adjustments based on the feedback you're getting, change the project in real time. We've had localities who participated in this program who actually made adjustments to their project while it was installed based on the feedback they were getting. And this can help you build support for more permanent solutions as you're trying to seek funding and buy-in from partners. Another exciting opportunity that's part of this, so these types of complete streets pop-up projects are always great opportunities to collaborate with local artists. We've had several jurisdictions that participated in this program who engaged artists directly and helped design their projects. In this case, we are thrilled to announce that we actually have support from the Kresge Foundation, so that one state that's selected, so the 3 jurisdictions in that state, their projects, will be funding hiring artists basically to support each of their projects, designing them, doing cool placemaking as part of the project. And that selection will be based on the overall strength of the application from that state. Just a couple more words about this emphasis on DOT managed roads. Again, we realize that this is not common to do these types of very quick turnaround temporary projects on state roads. We want to work with states that are interested in trying to crack this. Basically, we're interested in places that want to pilot this with us. We won't reject a state that is not willing to do this, but we'll give heavy priority to states that are interested in doing this on state maintained roads. And a big part of this is because in many cases, state roads are some of the most dangerous in the community. More than half of fatal pedestrian crashes occur on state-owned roads. These roads often also bisect communities of all different sizes, creating real barriers to access for people who are traveling outside of a vehicle. So we want to work with states that understand the problem, want to work with us to pilot new approaches. So in terms of the application process, the applications are currently open. They'll be open for another month, and I'll go over the dates in just a moment. State DOTs must be the primary applicants. In this case, this is sort of to the point I just made. We really want states that want to step up and be leaders on complete streets. We want to show other states cool things that state DOTs are doing. Each state DOT in applying needs to have one local jurisdiction co-applicant. You are welcome and encouraged to have all three identified already, but if not, we'll just work with you to identify the other two once you're selected. So each program ultimately will have the state DOT, state health agency partners, and then 3 local jurisdictions. But you have to have a state DOT lead applicant and 1 jurisdiction going in. You do not need to have the health partners identified. We would help you engage those through our partnership with the CDC. You also don't need to have the project locations identified in your application. You're certainly welcome to, but it's not necessary. That will be part of the initial workshops, is thinking through what good locations might be based on who has the greatest need, where your safety challenges are. You do need signed letters of support for both the state DOT and any local jurisdiction applicants. For the state DOTs, we're asking that the primary point of contact on the application be a department leader or equivalent. I know that can mean slightly different things from state to state. You can check with us if you have questions. The intent just being to make sure that there's actually enough buy-in to see the program through once you're selected. And I'll just mention one thing about the application form itself. This isn't directly written on the slide, but we tried to structure the application to make this coordination between states and localities as easy as possible. So you'll see that there's a form online on our website, which I believe is on the next slide. Some of the information has to be entered online, but then there's separate PDFs basically that the state and locality each submit. So you can fill that out separately with more information about your Complete Streets work, enter it all at once so you don't have to be sitting next to each other trying to fill in the whole thing. So in terms of dates, applications are open for a little over a month. They'll close on Friday, July 29th. We will notify recipients by the end of August, potentially sooner. It will depend a little bit on what we get. And then we'll reach out to the states at that point to start to coordinate the timing, and we will kick off those workshops in late October, early November. And that's it. So we are at the question and answer portion of this session. So as I said, you're welcome to continue to put questions in the chat. I'll take a look at that in just a moment, but you're also welcome to raise your hand using Zoom. There's a little image here of how to do that in case you haven't done it before. And then you can come off mute and ask directly once we call on you. I'm just seeing that there aren't any immediate questions in the chat, but glad to hear of some interest in the program. I'll leave a bit of a dramatic pause to see if any questions do come up. You're also welcome to contact me, Rayla Bellis, with questions. Any recommendations for getting our state DOT to apply if our local jurisdiction is interested? Yes, great question. And this is something that we're hoping that local jurisdictions will reach out to their state to suggest this. I would definitely suggest maybe finding other local jurisdictions that are interested as well, so that you can go as a group to the state. I think that always helps. But beyond that, just pointing out that this is free. This is completely free. The project itself is paid for through Smart Growth America resources, and that we really will elevate these stories to our national networks and hold you all up as models. I'm seeing a question, design assistance is so great, but what about maintenance? Yeah, so we have a couple responses to that. So we will talk a little bit about several things related to this. One, the opportunities during maintenance projects to make Complete Streets improvements in general. We'll talk about that. We'll also, part of our goal with these sessions, like I said, part of the purpose is cross-jurisdictional collaboration and identifying policy barriers specifically. In many states, maintenance agreements are a major policy barrier, so we will get into discussions about that through the sessions as well in many cases. But yeah, that's a question that a lot of states run into. In the case of these particular projects, they're short term, so maintenance is a consideration actually, and that's something that we talk about, is having a maintenance plans so that for the duration of the project, they're in place, but for these projects themselves, that won't be as much of a specific question. Okay. Last call for any questions related to this program. Some of the questions in the chat are about broader complete streets, and I would encourage you to apply for the program, or we'll talk in more detail, and also just look at some of Smart Growth America's resources on this. Well, just as a reminder, this recording will be available after the session. We would definitely encourage you all to apply. Don't hesitate to reach out to me, Rayla Bellis, if you have any questions. My email address is on the page with the application form, and also was on a previous slide, and we'll share that along with the recording. We will be contacting all of you since you joined the session to see if you're interested in applying later in the application process if we don't hear from you. So hope that you all will apply, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Have a great afternoon, everyone.